what is one boundary most people don't realize they need to make, but would change their life if they set it?
Well, I would call them internal boundaries. So it's how we relate to ourselves. Do we keep our word to ourselves? Do we do the things we say we're going to do? I say I'm going to meditate. Do I do that? Or are those the boundaries I'm always collapsing into and not doing, but I will keep my word to other people, but not myself? So I think that boundaries for yourself are probably the most important. And if you start treating yourself as well as you treat the other people in your life, it will completely transform your life.
Before we hop into this episode, I have one favor to ask of you. Over 95% of the people that tune into this podcast are not yet subscribed. And whether it's your first time here or you are a regular listener of the show, I just ask that you hit that button. We've grown over 880% this past year, and I know we are destined to impact so many people in this year of 2025. And the way we're going to do that is by you hitting that subscribe button, you sharing it with a friend that you think will get value from the show, you leave a rating and review on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, you leave a comment, a like on this post, and that you get it out to more people, because that is the way we're going to impact more and more people. And the way that I'm going to return the favor to you is by getting more and more guests on the show to help you expand your mind, question your beliefs, and really help you open your mind up to how good this life can really get. And I'm going to do that by having interviews and conversations with exceptional people. And it's just going to get better and better. And I hope that you stick along for the journey and then you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss an episode. Let's hop into the interview. Yeah, it's funny that we don't think about ourselves when we think of boundaries. We always think of the other people. Why do you think internal boundaries, obviously boundaries as a whole and everything that you put into the world, we should be taught in schools, but we're not? What do you think is missing?
I think the people teaching don't know how to do it. Like, I feel like when you look at the way that we're socialized, whether we're looking at the way that boys are socialized, which is different than the way that girls are socialized. Boys are socialized more to be independent and to suppress or push down their feelings, right? There's still a vibe out there of like, don't cry if you're a boy. It's like, if you're, lead and be independent. And for women and girls, it's be a good girl. It's turn that frown around. It's if you don't have anything nice to say, little one, don't say anything at all. So you have the people-pleasing condition happening for girls turning into women, where it's like, don't have any needs. You be helpful, lady. You be helpful to other people. If you have needs, figure it out, but you're not getting them met by anyone else. So, what I write about a lot is the female experience because it's what I know. And it's women in my age group, which is decades older than you, pal, where, we're grandmothers. We, have kids that are grown. It's like what we were taught was to overfunction, overgive. You hear people talking about like, oh my God, you would love Betty. She would give anyone the shirt off her back. I'm like, Betty, keep your effing shirt on, please. How about, why is that celebrated? Be discerning about giving. So I think that so much of the way we relate to boundaries has to do with the way that we're raised. And I feel like young men in this country in particular are at this place where like, there's so much expected, and yet there's no clear way of getting there. It's like, be sensitive, not too sensitive. Ask for permission. Don't be too weak. Don't be too much in your feminine, because then that's not a turn on. Like, hello? What are we supposed to do as young men is the question that I see out there on the interwebs, and I understand why it's a question. Yes, we have boundaries. Yes, consent. Obviously, duh. We understand that the world has changed, especially the world of sexuality. But then you have the people who take it to the extreme, extreme, extreme. Like, should you always ask someone before you kiss them? No? Like, I don't know. Like, if you're sitting with someone, you're vibing, you like each other, you're attracted to each other, and you lean towards someone to kiss them. If they don't want to kiss you, they'll move back. Then don't do it. And listen, I'm not saying don't ask for consent, but I feel like there's all of these sort of extreme, in a way, expectations can be for men out here in the world. And I feel like there's not as much. I mean, listen, there are some, you're doing great stuff. There are some people leading and helping, and that's great. But we have to talk about it. Like, we have to create an open dialogue so that men, boys turning into men, young men, feel like they can ask questions and not feel stupid,
Yeah, I feel like we're supposed to, men, women, whatever it may be, I feel like we're supposed to know. And we go into life just expecting to know whatever that is, our boundaries, emotional intelligence. I said I'm in Austin, Texas right now. I'm in Austin, Texas for an emotional intelligence coaching program that's like 4 months long. And it's like, I just feel as though many of us just want to project outwardly and we want just to go through life without doing the work rather than going internally and realizing like that is the work that really needs to be done. And you're right. Has it always been extremism? Because it feels like it's more than ever.
I feel like it's more than ever because we're reaching a tipping point where there's a lot of things going on politically, there's a lot of things going on globally, like there's a lot of unrest. So it's almost like you need the extremes to get anything in the middle to move. That makes sense? Like
Yeah.
you need both extremes because then the middle will move to something that's more center. But
Hmm.
it takes time for societies to change. And we've been changing. And I feel like if you look at the patriarchy and you look at I have 3 sons who are amazing, grown up, they're all dads, right? My husband's amazing. So I do not subscribe to like this, the future is female thing. Because even though I love women and I have the same friends I've had since Nixon was in office. Yes, long before you were alive on planet Earth. So I've had the same friends since 1973. I really think that we have to look at what is the expectation for boys, for girls, for men, for women. Like what is it right now? And what can we do to support people figuring out? Like, what are the next right steps? This whole patriarchy and sort of blaming, in a way, not blaming, because listen, the patriarchy is real, but this is societal and structural, right? The oppression of women, the oppression of anyone who's other, right? Any marginalized group. This is real. This isn't like Terry Cole decided that was real. It's just real. This is the truth. And it's been like a reckoning has been coming for years and years and years. And now we're in an extreme situation where it has to be so bad that everyone who's been sound asleep, like it's always going to be amazing in this guy, whatever, who gives a shit? There'll be another. I don't know. I feel like we got to wake up. I feel like, people are feeling motivated, but I feel like with the patriarchy and in a way, sometimes I look at the way young men have sort of gotten the short end of the stick, where it's like, can I blame you, James, for the patriarchal oppression of women? I'm feeling like maybe not. Now, if you keep it going, if you're an incel or one of those guys who hates women, okay, then perhaps.
Hmm.
But generally speaking, I feel don't you get a clean slate? Like, don't you get to like be a young man, finding your way, which is what you're doing, and don't other young men get that too? So I think it's a combination. But the patriarchy it's a real construct. And it's hard to talk about and it's hard to figure out how to change it. But I do think we have to talk about it?
Percent. And I think you're right when it comes to the extremism aspect of things. I feel like it gives people an identity. I was just speaking about this recently. Like if you're in the middle, it's like I'm politically homeless. I could not care less. I do not focus on it whatsoever because generally speaking, I'm not that impacted. And so I don't want it to stress me out in every single day life because I just know too many people that let it controls their life. And I think for similar stuff like this, it's like I can only do what I can do. But like you said, I'm going to be projected as having certain different things that put me in a position where other people are going to judge me simply based off the way that I look and the person that I am. And it's
Mhm.
unfortunate that it is that way. For you, when you were a talent agent for supermodel celebs, and then you realized like mental health was like the most important thing that you ended up just speaking about, I hope that it's continuously moving in that way. But do you think it is?
Oh, I do. I mean, listen, even before the pandemic, but the pandemic really brought to bear the inequities in mental health care and the incredible need. We were all so collectively traumatized by this experience that hey, that was our first, for most of us, unless you were alive in 1918, that was our very first global pandemic. And so everything changed. All of the constructs, which is like, get up, burn through the day, go to work, go to darts on Wednesday night, everything that we hung our lives on got deconstructed. So what was left was whatever kind of relationships you were in. So for a lot of my therapy clients, I had a client who, listen, everybody was drinking and eating gummies and smoking tons of weed. Like all my clients, even ones who were not addictive types, this was happening, right? So it's circumstantial. Everyone's kind of laughing about it. We're all at home. Everyone's making fucking sourdough. Like, we get what was sort of going on. But this woman, she was upset because she was drinking too much. And she's like, hey, I really want you to hold me accountable. I don't want to drink during the week anymore, just on the weekends. And I was like, okay. So we start, we're talking about it. And then first week she fails. Second week she fails. She's like, I didn't even make it to Tuesday. I was like, okay, we're talking about the wrong things. So I said to her, listen, any time, well, I'll preface it by saying, anytime you find yourself, anybody listening to this or watching this, in a repeated situation that you don't want to be in, where you go, how the hell am I here again? Like, what is going on? Why am I here again? I'm going to give you a little tool that you can use. It's called the secondary gain questions. So secondary gain is the unobvious gain we get by staying stuck. So I just said the questions. I said, hey, just spontaneously answer this. What do you get to not face, not feel, or not experience by drinking 3 big girl glasses of wine every single night? And she literally just said that my marriage is over. And I was like, okay, we should be talking about your marriage and not about your drinking. Because I knew the drinking wasn't the primary thing. I knew it was a symptom, but that's what the secondary gain questions can help you understand. So anytime you guys listening, anytime you feel stuck, ask yourself, what am I getting to avoid by staying stuck here? Because you make sense. Your brain makes sense, right? We do things for a reason. It's not haphazard. It's not willy-nilly. It really isn't. And so when we can start to uncover that secondary gain, we could go, now I can focus on the actual problem. Because really, when you think about what we're doing, when we're repeatedly in situations we don't want to be in or that we're upset about, we're like endlessly lighting fires. And then we're like, oh my God, why so many fires? And then you realize with the secondary gain questions that you're the effing pyro, that it's actually you who's lighting the fires inadvertently. And then you can look at, what do I need to actually change? Or what, you know what I mean?
So powerful. Yeah, it's so funny. That's why I think coaching and therapy and just having an external source of accountability or a mirror is the most powerful thing that anyone can do in their lives, because you have so many blind spots. Like you said, whatever you're doing that you tell yourself you don't want to do, it's serving you in some way. It's holding you back from facing the actual thing. It's like people don't want a solution to their problems. They want relief from the problems. And so they do the thing that gives them temporary pleasure, and it doesn't actually solve it. And so I think it's so powerful. One question I love asking therapists, coaches, people that are in your line of work is, what do clients come to you thinking they need? And then what do you help them realize they actually need it? Because it's usually never the same thing.
It's always so different. Sometimes people will come in and be clear about, I really want to work on, my communication in my marriage or whatever. But a lot of times, because my practice is mostly women and some gay men, women would come in, they'd have physical problems. And they knew I'm also a meditation teacher, and I've been, I'm on Insight Timer and a bunch of places for years and years. And so they would be like, okay, I can't sleep. Can you help me with insomnia? Or I have TMJ, or I'm depressed, right? But they may not realize why they're depressed. So I feel like I do a lot of people coming in thinking that I'm going to somehow tell them how to magically fix their husband or their wife. Like I've got some magic pill for them. And what we're really doing is I'm walking them in. I visualize it like walking them down into the basement of their mind, which is the unconscious mind. So imagine I'm wearing like a little miner's lamp. I'm holding someone's hand. I've got like a broom just in case there's anything down there. And we're really uncovering a lot of this unconscious material, because you can't heal, right? I have these 5 pillars of healing, and the first one is self-awareness, because we can't heal anything we're unaware of or anything we're in denial of. So I feel like a lot of times they're coming in like, I just need you to help me. I had this one, and I wrote about this in my first book, Boundary Boss, where she was this high-powered magazine editor, like in her late 20s. She was just like the straight A valedictorian type of gal, just getting it all done. She was friggin' gorgeous. She had an amazing wardrobe, and she was like, hello, can you please help me I just got diagnosed with shingles. Apparently, I have too much stress. So, can we do a weekend intensive? Can you fix this in a weekend? Literally, that was her question. I was like, no, I cannot. She just thought, can I throw money at this? Can we go to like a spa for a weekend and you can help me? I'm like, no, man. P.S. I have a life and don't want to do that. But in the meantime, this is not how it works. And it took a long time for her to really get. I'm like, there's no way to go around the middle. There's only through. There's only through. And when we're not willing to go through, we're going to keep going around that same problem in a different way over and over again. So we just got to get brave and go, okay, let me find the right therapist if you can, or the right course or the right mastermind or whatever it is to help walk me through. Because I always feel like my clients think I hold the magic. I do not. I hold up the mirror to their magic. I'm like a damn good GPS to get you to the information you need to process, which I will be here for, but it's not me. It's not about the quote unquote guru. There are no gurus. It's about you. Like, you have the information. Sometimes it's just hard to find where it is.
I love it so much. This work is just so fascinating to me and exciting to speak about. When I was 17, I became a coach. And one of the things that people would continue to bring up to me is like, you don't have people questioning like your age or anything in that realm. And I would say that, well, I don't have the answers per se. I just have the questions that help you uncover the answers because I don't have them. You do. But we often don't ask the right questions, and we're not taught the right questions to ask because we ask disempowering questions. So we get disempowering answers, and it keeps us in that cycle. That one you brought up earlier was so powerful. And one question I love to ask myself is, what role am I playing in this? Because we often, in most scenarios, we want to project and we want to put our responsibility off to someone else or put it off into the world and say it's that person's fault or that's the world's fault. What are some questions that you often ask or you ask your clients that help you get out of that cycle of continuously asking negative questions and keeping you in that negative cycle?
Okay, so if one of the exercises I love to give clients, because it's so potent and it's easy, is I will have anyone who comes in do a resentment inventory.
Yes.
So we're just going to start there, because we all know who we're copying resentment for and why, like, it. So I'll ask you, if you people who are listening, you'll pick your top 3 relationships, let's say, and you're going to write down, what do you feel resentful about? You're going to write out the situation, and then you're going to say, what is my 50%? Meaning, so I had an example that I put in, I think, my first book about my sister and I both lived in the city for many, many years, and she had keys to my apartment. And she would go to my apartment without asking me and just borrow shit and then leave. So I didn't mind. We shared closets and that was okay. My only request was, let me know. So I'm not looking for the friggin' thing that you took, right? Like, just let me know. And she would continue to not let me know. So if I were writing a resentment thing, I'm resentful because my sister takes my things and doesn't tell me, even though I've multiple times asked her. My 50% is, I need to set a more stern boundary, a stronger boundary around that behavior, meaning I need to add a consequence to, if it happens again, I'm taking your keys away. And then I'll be sad because we can't share closets, but this is now out of control and whatever. And then what is my action plan? And my action plan in that scenario was, have a conversation with her. Don't make it a joke because it's not funny. You're not feeling funny about it. Be as honest as you are, as serious as you feel it is. And tell her you don't want to take the keys away. But if she does it again, you will, because it really makes you feel disrespected and not considered. And it's annoying how much time I would spend looking for like my friggin' wrap that she had, So that's what you guys are going to do. Because what this will do for you when you start to identify where you're feeling resentful is there's clarity, right? It's not just, because sometimes when we don't take the time to stop and think, we love to be like, I'm in a bad mood. You're like, no, that's not, maybe you're in a bad mood, but it's good to know why, right? Because a lot of times you have good reason to be in a bad mood, but you're also not taking any action to remedy the things that are bothering you. And you got to learn to have the conversations. So the resentment inventory is like a great place to start, because we always look at, and sometimes our 50%, let's just say I had a client who was in a really bad marriage, very abusive. And I was like, really wanted her to get out. But of course you can't really say that as a therapist. She knew it though. Like, we were working towards it. And it's like the resentment is I'm in this bad relationship and I'm resentful that he doesn't appreciate me. He doesn't, and then sometimes your 50% is simply staying, right? I wasn't blaming her. She's not responsible for his terrible behavior, but there is a responsibility for her to get out. And it's not easy. And I understand that I'm not victim blaming. There's a reality, though, that we have to look at. How can I make it better? I have a whole, and if anyone is in that situation, you can go to my YouTube channel. I have how to safely leave an abusive relationship. That's what you search. And I give you all kinds of resources and ways to do it very safely and very stealthily, because there really is a specific way that this should be done. Do not broadcast to anyone that you're thinking about doing it if you're in a rough situation like that.
Yeah, your work is incredible. It's really cool to see you go internally. I feel as though for a lot of people that achieve external success, they almost get to a point, or I hope they get to a point where they realize that the external success isn't everything. And I mean, like, you can, there's a big difference between being successful and feeling successful. I've been talking a lot about this recently on almost every podcast, because a lot of people are successful. They have the money, they have the status, they have the relationships, they have all the things that they think that they want. But at the end of the day, they don't feel good with themselves. And as we started this conversation with that internal boundary, we neglect them for ourselves. And it's like the idea of, if you had work tomorrow and you had to be at work, you're going to show at work because other people are counting on you. But if you told yourself you're going to do a meeting with yourself every Friday to go over all the things that you can prove about yourself, or just kind of doing that inventory, we neglect it because we don't have anyone else externally holding ourselves accountable.
Mm-hmm.
So when it comes to holding boundaries, or just kind of just showing up for ourselves better, what are those small steps that we can take on a day-to-day basis to kind of get in that habit?
Well, before we do that, let's do the boundary thing quickly, like just so that we're on the same page of what is the definition. So according to Terri Cole, I want you to think about your boundaries as your own personal rules of engagement. It's the way that we let other people know what's okay with us and what's not okay with us. Your boundaries, again, according to me, are made up of your preferences, your desires, your limits, and your deal breakers. So not all boundaries are created equal, but they're all important because they don't just make up your boundaries, right? Think about it. Your preferences, James, your limits, your desires, your deal breakers, they make up your boundaries, and they make up who you are as a person. So they're important. Like your preferences, women in particular are trained to be like, oh, you know me, no fuss, no muss, whatever you guys want to do is great. Like, we've been trained out of our preferences. And like to think that if you have a preference, then you're kind of being a little extra. So I'm just going to call bullshit on that, because no. And your preferences matter, because this is how people know us too. Right. So if you're saying, yeah, if you're a people pleaser, and this obviously comes in any gender identification can be a people pleaser. You're saying yes when you want to say no. What are you really doing? You're giving corrupted information to the people in your life about who you are. You're literally misleading people. And then I've seen in my therapy practice, women in particular, in their 6th, 7th decade of life, coming into my practice and being like, okay, I've done it all. Kids all went to Ivy League schools. Most of them have advanced degrees. I'm on the board of all of these charities. I still work out. My husband and I travel. Hello? Is this all there is? Because I thought I would feel way different than this. Like, it's so empty. And that's because if you build an entire life on boxes that somebody else created and thought you should check, it is not a very satisfying life. So boundaries are super important, and they are the foundation for people creating the lives that they want. And how I came to this myself was through the therapy practice. And obviously, you teach what you most need to learn. So I was a boundary disaster, which is not uncommon, up into my 20s for sure. And it was so painful, and I didn't know what it was. And then suddenly I became a psychotherapist after being a talent agent, and I started seeing over and over again in my therapy practice people coming in, and it didn't matter what their presenting problem was. Problems with work, problems with their partner, health stuff. I could just connect the dots backwards to them not knowing or having this incredibly important skill set of being fluent in the language of boundaries. just not knowing how to do it, not feeling like they should do it, not knowing what to say. And that is major. So me seeing that is what inspired me to write my first book. I was like, people need a guide. They need scripts. They need to know how to do this. They need to understand how. How do I actually go about it with people? And and can be so threatening to do it, but you can do it and you can learn how to do it. Anyway, long way around the barn. I forgot what I was getting back to, but I started with boundaries, and then we were talking about what? Tell me.
What are the small things that we can do on a day-to-day basis to make boundaries a habit?
All right. Well, first of all, prioritize your relationship with yourself. So that means you need a morning situation. I do not get on the internet. Hold on. I'm trying to light this candle. I do not get on, I don't work. I don't touch my phone. I don't do anything unless I'm taking pictures of my dog, but I'm not online until 11 o'clock in the morning. So I get up, I meditate with my husband in bed with my puppy, who's a pit bull mix, who's the cutest dog who ever lived.
I have a pit bull mix as well. They're the cutest.
Oh, she's
Loving,
the best.
loving. Yep. The girls
I
too.
love that
Yeah.
girl. Charlie is her name. She's so freaking cute. But she jumps up and meditates with us. Get up. We have chickens. We have geese. We have chores to do outside. I make the coffee. We sit and talk. We light our fireplace. We like have real, as my friend Jenny P would say, real mother effing life before any other life. I work out every day. So that's probably 6 or 7 days a week. Jump on my trampoline, lift weights. I'm a postmenopausal woman. You know what I'm saying, James? You got to lift the weights if you want to have good bones. I do all of that. Talk to my mom, talk to my sister. Then I start working. So I think that you really need it. You don't have to do that. And obviously, I didn't do that my entire life because I've been a baller for years. And when I was a talent agent, I was literally in a spin class at 5:30 a.m. So trust me, this has come with age, evolution, expansion, time, having, being more comfortable, being able to choose to do that. But I want you to think about your morning routine. Does it set you up to be energized? Does it set you up to be productive, to be happy, to be joyful? And again, it doesn't mean you have to have every day has to be a happy day, but we have choices to set ourselves up for success. And I want you to think about another thing, boundaries, because these are all internal boundaries that we're talking about, is I want you to think about your health. Do you intentionally hydrate? Do you sleep 7 to 8 hours a night? Do you eat decent food? Do you avoid drugs and alcohol? And listen, I'm not saying never. I'm just saying not a lot. I mean, young people I know are into gummies or whatever they're into. But the thing is, what you need is your brain, right? And you think your brain is just going to stick around. But your brain is just like your body. And if you take shitty care of your body, you will have health problems. If you take crappy care of your brain, you will have cognition problems. You will have memory problems. You will have I don't know. I think that personally, I was diagnosed with cancer in my early 30s. And thank God I'm fine. And that was 30 years ago, almost 31. And I think that changed how I looked. Like the entitlement of youth, right? Something like that doesn't happen to me. I was a friggin' vegetarian for 10 years. I was running a triathlon. What? What? Not me. Other people get cancer, but not me. I hydrate. I care. I've been in therapy since I'm 19. I stopped drinking when I was 21. I was so mad. I was so pissed off. I was I had a whole checklist of why they had given cancer to the wrong person and that it shouldn't have been me. And then you just wake up and go, oh, you know what? Holy crap. You know what is not guaranteed me? Any of this. It could literally go away today. So that the entitlement of my youth, and I won't project this onto all youths. Maybe you guys are all super grateful, and yay, I hope you are. But it was more being just unaware. It woke me up so hardcore and made me also go, am I living my right life? Am I living my best life? And the answer was no. So everything shifted from my workouts being about the size of my ass is what it used to be. It was all about physical beauty and fitness and no, everything became about health. I woke up. I was without health, you don't have anything. When you go through cancer, you realize You get a diagnosis. You know what your life consists of? Literally nothing else but that. Like, please, God, do not let this thing cut my life short. Please, I'll do whatever. So I think that that's something to get really dialed into of how do you take care of yourself? And I consider all of that internal boundaries. Go to the doctor. Don't wait until you have a problem. Be proactive with your health. Get an annual physical if you can afford to, right? If you have insurance, I know a lot of people don't, but then there are other ways that we can get creative online places, and see what the doctors say you should do at whatever age you're at. Don't wait until there's a crisis because there's so much we can do to avert and to avoid having that crisis. And listen, did I need to get cancer to change my life? Probably. So, as my friend Chris Carr would say, I won't call it a gift. You know why, James? Because I wouldn't give it to you. But it does have this profound power to make you just wake up where you're like, wow, this could go away. This amazing, beautiful, delicious, awesome life could be cut short. Wow. So anyway, I've lived very gratefully since that point. So anyone is like, how can I live a better life? Well, we're going to do all the things I just said, which is make sure you're eating right, drinking water, don't do tons of drugs and alcohol, make sure you're sleeping right, try not to be in toxic relationships. If you don't know how to not do that, get into therapy to figure it out, because that could also just ruin your life. You want to allow yourself to be creative, right? Do good things. You said something before, James. You were like, I'm not political. It's not my thing. Here's the thing. You're either part of the solution or part of the problem. So my feeling is you personally, you got to be involved enough to be supporting the right things. Just means vote locally, vote nationally, right? If you do want to call your representative, I have an amazing app called 5 Calls that you could use and makes it super easy, but you don't have to do that. But you also can't be 100% hands off because you want to be on the right side of history in this. That's just my 2 cents from a motherly point of view. Anyway, back to what people can do to have better boundaries. Is that what we were talking about? I feel like I just went
day to
all the way
day.
around the
No,
board.
but you gave them all. You right, like all of those things to internal boundaries. And I think when I think of the first off, I'll address the political aspect. Is I don't want to have it in conversation in everyday life. Like I just feel like so many people just makes it
Correct.
consume their lives. Like you
Same.
said, do what you can do, but outside of what you
Absolutely.
can do, like almost act like it's not a thing after you've done what you can do, because it's
Yes.
going to take over your life. And one of the internal boundaries that I think, good.
No, I was going to say protect what you're saying, and I agree 100%, is protect your peace.
Yes.
Because you're the only one who can. So don't watch the friggin' news. Read the news so you can stop when you need to. Be as educated as you can tolerate being. But I do feel like we have an obligation to be. But I agree with you. I have so many boundaries around talking about politics. Dude, no, I will not. And Uncle Bob, you cannot provoke me into a conversation because I will leave this picnic if you insist. You know what I mean? Like literally, I have to have these conversations with my extended family.
Yeah, I'm 100% with you. And I think the morning activities, the things that similar to you, definitely wasn't cancer for me, but my father and uncle both passed away at 37. I almost died when I was born. Grandfather passed a few months before his retirement. So I had like mortality in my life a lot, like kind of straight in my face. And I feel like for me, like I almost put my future self above my present self a little too much sometimes. And so I'm kind of like the opposite of most people, because everyone is like more so temporary pleasure right now, what's going to give me joy now.
Right.
And I think, but all the health things, I think of like my future self so extensively much. It's really unfortunate that for, I would say, more than 99% of the population, it has to get to a point where things are so bad where you're forced to make a positive change.
Yeah.
And I hope there's some time in the future where that shifts, because you're right. I mean, we have all of the information in the world. It's not we're lacking information to do the right things. We are just lacking the initiative, and we're lacking the accountability and internal accountability to show up for ourselves to do that.
Yes. I was going to say the change, though, like you said, sometimes we have to wait for something bad to happen. I believe that's true for some people. I also know, like for myself, I stopped drinking when I was a senior in college. If you can believe that, like the dumbest time ever to stop.
I know.
You're like, why then? How about wait another 3 months? But I didn't. And I had a therapist who was very sort of confronting about my drinking. And she basically said, hey, what you're describing is alcoholic behavior. And I was like, what? Who? And she was like, you. And I was like, well, man, if that's true, then everyone I know is an alcoholic. And she's like, well, that may be true. And I
Yeah.
don't care because I'm not treating everyone you know. And if
Mhm.
you don't get help with the 12-step program, I will stop seeing you. And I was like, damn, can Bev just break up with me? Like, can your therapist just break up with you like that? Holy crap. So she said, you have to go to a 12-step program. So I was like, okay. So I was going to school in Long Island and I went to a church in Syosset, like a basement, always 12-step meetings were in a church basement.
Mhm.
And, it was the 80s. I know you were nowhere near a twinkle in anyone's eye, but that's when it was. So you can imagine big hair, shoulder pads, like, oh my God, the amount of makeup was insane. Anyway, I
Mhm.
go in and I'm sitting there and I'm sitting by the door smoking my Parliament 100s considerately. And a woman comes over to me and similar to the way I was, like big hair and long crazy nails. And I was like, well, she looks great. She was about 10 years older than me. And she said, are you new here? And I was like, oh God, can't believe now I'm being called out in this meeting. And I was like, yeah, kind of. And she was like, what brought you? And I said, the truth. I was like, my therapist made me. I don't know. I didn't even know what else to say. I was like, well, and then I said, well, what brought you here? And she said, I killed a 6-year-old boy in a drunk driving accident. And I was like, oh God. That moment
Clicked.
changed the trajectory of my life. And so sometimes it doesn't have to be you, right? It didn't have to be me killing a 6-year-old. I was devastated for this angel who shared her story that changed my life. Would I have left there and stopped drinking if she hadn't told me that? Probably not. I left and I was like, God, I get it. I get it. I'm done. And I was. And that was 30 something years ago.
It's so powerful. Yeah, it doesn't have to be us sometimes, and it's
No.
similar to like when you're growing up and you don't have role models. The people that you're looking up to that you say, well, these are not good role models for what I want. Do the opposite. It's like a similar thing. It's like you may not have something to look to say this is what I should do, but
Yeah.
you definitely have something to look to and say this is what I shouldn't do, and you can do the
Right.
exact opposite. And that was
Yes.
definitely the case for me. One thing that I think is really powerful and people don't think about when it comes to boundaries is that we think we're doing the other people a favor when we're saying yes when we want to say no, but the reality of it is that we are being emotionally untrustworthy, and that is you are literally creating a relationship where people don't ever get to know who you actually are and how you actually feel, and that is only going to keep you in that cycle. How can we break out of that?
Well, first of all, that will be a realization for lots of people listening that we're not doing it for them. We're doing it for us because we're people pleasers. We're doing it for us because we're codependent, right?
Yeah.
At the base of all codependent behavior is an overt or covert desire or attempt to control other people's outcomes. So it could be me not telling you the truth about how I feel about something because I don't want you to feel a particular way about it, right? So again, this is overt or covert attempt at control. And that was a hard pill for me to swallow myself, like a bitter pill when I was younger in my 20s, realizing how incredibly codependent I was in every relationship known to mankind. I was completely indiscriminate. It would be like my mailman. I could get like codependently attached to fucking anybody, and I'm not kidding. And when you realize like, wow, I thought it was about love, or I thought it was about caring, or I thought it was about being nice, but it was really about me and my comfort. And I don't want to be uncomfortable and I don't want them to be mad at me. So anytime that you're thinking in a relationship, oh, I don't want them to think, or anytime you say, I don't want them to feel, I want you to back up and just get your little hiney back onto your own side of the street, because what they think and how they feel is their side of the street, and what you think and how you feel is yours. And in Boundary Boss, the first book that I wrote, I make these distinctions between, like, we have different types of boundaries, right? Emotional boundaries, which is what we're talking about right now, right? Do I take on the emotion? Do I feel responsible for the emotions of others? That's probably the hardest one. And I was doing a live retreat a couple of years ago, and I asked the participants, and I think it was 97% of the women at this retreat said that emotional boundaries were their most challenging to set. And it is because We don't want people to be upset. We don't want there to be a problem. We don't want there to be conflict. We don't want anyone to be mad. We don't want to be rejected. There's just, it could go on and on and on. And I don't think that is unique to women. I think there's truth in that for men as well. But it's something to really think about, that you are so worth knowing. And you're worth figuring out who you are, because as young people, on the interwebs, out in those streets, people love to talk about, like, just uncover your authentic self. And I'm like, hey man, do you think you're like an onion? And like, we're going to peel back all these things and there's going to be a fully developed authentic self in the middle? Well, there's not. We have decisions to make. We have work to do. We have choices to make. What kind of a person do you want to be? Right? You will have your essential essence, right? Your essential nature. I do believe in nature and nurture, of course, right? Because I'm an extrovert. That is my nature, right? But there's all kinds of other things that I got through the nurture of the way that I was raised, right? How I related to other people, how I related to my romantic relationships. We have all these downloaded blueprints that get downloaded in the unconscious mind that then we have to figure out, do I think that, or was that just what my family thought? Like, am I taking this on? Do I want this? So I think there's something really powerful about deciding who you want to be. Can you hear my goose?
Yeah.
Just keep it down, Frankie. What's your deal? She's right in front of my face, screaming, shut up. Anyway, you have decisions to make about who you want to be. And look exactly what you have made a great point before, James. You said you may not know how to do it, but you can look at someone and be like, well, I know, don't do that. Like, I can look at this person and go, that behavior is definitely not getting me where I want to go. I also suggest that you look at people who have gotten where you want to go. And that I always say to my clients, coaching clients, therapy clients, when they're wanting to do something, I'm like, let's find proof in the world that this is possible, right? That it's been done before. And it won't be done the way you'll do it, right? Because it's not been done by you before. So it's still worth doing. But I always look and go, there's somebody who's doing it. And I love proof that it's possible, that something can happen. Because we have to think about it this way, James, like every single thing that ever has been, from the atomic bomb to trains to everything that's every great idea, everything that's ever been created, any evil idea, this started as a thought in someone's mind. And so don't minimize the importance, you guys listening or watching, of the thoughts in your mind, the original thought. Look at James. He became a coach at 17. Who does that? Most people don't do that. They're too busy, like, trying to get laid and just smoking weed. Like, but most people don't do that. Or maybe you were doing all three of those things. I do not know. I am not judging. But I am saying it's pretty directionally based, right? For you to do that at that age, you were like, I see something. I see a direction. I feel confident. Doesn't mean you need to do this for the rest of your life, but there's something there. And I think that we can all take a page out of sort of your book, in that, one of my friends, Danielle Laporte, says, launch and learn, right? Launch and learn. It's like half the time with what I'm doing in my life and in my career, I am building that mother effing plane while I'm flying it. Like, it's not all perfect. We don't do it perfectly. Artists, and if you're an author, if you're a writer, if anything you want to do, that all of this creating is messy. So we got to give ourselves permission to be messy,
100%. You encapsulate what I want to do with the podcast with the belief thing, because you're right. Either it's been done before or it's going to be done in the future. And what makes you believe this crazy belief that it can't be you? Like, there's proof out there. And so we have to hold that belief. And like you said, launch and learn. I mean, I started coaching, but I invested more money than I invested more than double the money I had in my bank account. And I was like, I'm going to figure it out, and we're going to hope that it works out. And I trusted in myself. Yeah, exactly. Just like hoping, like, I don't know. It feels right. I have two more questions for you. I know we're short on time. One thing when it comes to codependence, I think a lot of us have those patterns. We don't really recognize it, and we don't really know how to discern between codependence. Is this controlling? Is it caring? And we don't really think of the role we play in it. But how can we really understand that difference?
I think that you can use the resentment inventory to see where you might be overgiving or overfunctioning in your relationships, because that really does create resentment. So use that, and then ask the question, am I doing something for people that they can and should be doing for themselves? Am I doing more than my share? in this friendship or at work or whatever it is. Because I feel like resentment and codependent behaviors really do go together. So the resentment inventory will be like a little GPS to bring you to relationships and circumstances that need your attention.
So true. So many of us have hidden resentments in this world, and it ruins so many relationships because we're just unwilling to really explain how we actually feel because we've built the habit of not doing so. And that's why your work, that's why I wanted you on the podcast, because I feel like this work is just, it is absolutely necessary. It's not an option.
Agreed. I want to say something though about a lot of times it's not that people are unwilling. What I find most of the time, they simply don't have the words, which is why every single book I write has an entire chapter of scripts, just a million scripts. Because once you have the words, even if you do it kind of badly and sweating your ass off, you'll still do it. It's not having the language that makes you go, and then a lot of times we'll explode or say something we can't take back or say something mean because we're so frustrated, So the words are really important.
Yeah, it's so powerful. Okay, last question I ask every guest. The core of this podcast is a lot of unlearning, as I said, we started this conversation with. I think many of us just hold beliefs that are just not true about boundaries, about codependency, whatever it may be. And we're all, as you said, we're never a finished product. And so we're always unlearning. My question to you is, what belief are you currently unlearning?
I've been continually unlearning limiting beliefs about aging because I'm 60, I'll be 61 at the end of this month. And I think that even though I feel great about myself, I'm very happy in my life, but the collective belief that women are not valuable over the age of 40 or 50, and especially because I worked in entertainment for years where ageism was so bad. So I've been unlearning it. I feel like I have unlearned it. Like I believe that's true, but that certainly was one that took years of intentional work to just be like, nah, I'm not letting this patriarchal society is not telling me my value. I know my value. And just allowing myself to age the way that I was aging, right? I didn't want to do some extreme stuff. I mean, I thought about it, but I was like, no, I don't want to look 28 when I'm 61. I want to look like bright and shiny all the time. You know what I mean? But not like a weird, which I feel like sometimes it can look weird. So that's what I've been unlearning.
I love it. Yeah, you definitely embody it. Your joyous energy and childlike approach is really, really, really contagious. And I think a lot of people need to hold that. And we think that as we age, we're supposed to get rid of that. And I think like that is so many people. Some of the oldest people I've had on the podcast are in their late 80s. They are the most joyful people because they see themselves still a child. So I love it. All of your links and everything will be in the show notes. But is there anywhere you'd like to direct people?
Yeah, people, if you like this conversation, if it's interesting to you, I have an amazing community that's really reasonable. Go to terricole.com/TC for Terri Cole membership.
Beautiful. Thank you, Terri.
Thanks for having me.